What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And I've got some Evolve thoughts. Chris and I did a special bonus video, obviously, with a whole GM issue. And this, for me, I couldn't really put it into words, and I didn't want to start to make that leap, but we've had some people share some screenshots. We've got more information. We'll share them actually here with you guys. Just kind of help with that conversation and that discussion. But for the longest time, I've been feeling the policies that they have put in, it's at least for 2 years now, have been very antithetical to the community. And I'm going to go out and say, I think the system is somewhat broken. And I think this is coming to a head, and it's kind of showing it. And so this is a kind of that conversation. Chris, I sent you some screenshots. Obviously, more information has come out since we sat down and recorded our post. It's insane.
An hour ago.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, did you want all this information? Well, yes, actually we did. So thank you to everybody who sent us some stuff. But holy freaking crap, dude! This doesn't feel good. That's just where I'm coming from. What do you think?
So while this was kind of developing, I was hanging out in some new player streams because we have a lot of new players and we have a lot of people who have been players but are new creators, or creators who've been creating for a while, but they've got a new fervent, there's a new energy brought to the amount they're creating, the energy they're bringing to it, because the community is rewarding their efforts, right? So they show up and they're excited. We all show up, we're excited. That makes them put out more content excited. So we, of course, show up more excited. And so there's this positivity in the community that can tend to overshadow things like this.
Yeah.
There's this feeling of where 99% of things are good. And so it makes that 1% seem like we're trying to dig under a rock and look for something. But that 1%, anybody who gets stuck under that rock, anybody who gets caught as a part of that in this community, I would argue those 1% are made all the worse because there's such a hard contrast. You're not prepared for it. You're enjoying it. It's all wonderful. And then you have these moments hit you and it snaps. And we especially notice it when it hits people who are either getting bored with the content they're in. So they're already kind of on the edge of feeling like, do I still like this game? And then it hits. Or somebody that the advice feels piled on, where they get the same, where a person says something toxic to them in a dungeon, and the very next dungeon somebody says the very same toxic thing. That second person hits them so much harder. Or in this case, where it feels like, whether or not it feels like it's coming from a place of authority. So it feels like it's coming from either a community leader. We saw that with the Tate situation, or it comes directly from Square-Enix. That feels like, well, who do you call if you feel the police are the problem? Who there isn't anybody above Square-Enix in this relationship.
Yeah.
And so it can feel very helpless when you're like, do I call a GM about the GM?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. The other side, or not the other side, but the other kind of factor that's also been kind of, applying to this conversation. It might not necessarily be something that you guys have seen, just as a part of Reddit or just playing the game. But I've seen a lot of comments on Ginger Prime here, even Ginger Gaming Radio, literally talking about just how toxic and how just it was interesting. It coming in hot, this game is crap, this community is crap, and it just felt like, oh man, something went seriously wrong really quick for that individual. And I usually just try as a kind of an exit strategy, you think of an exit interview, just say, hey, you know what, it sucks, sorry about that, thanks for, and hopefully one day, whatever happened can hopefully be rectified, because I'm a big believer in forgiveness, right? Especially if somebody makes the effort. I think there's effort that has to be made by Square-Enix, and I want to kind of jump right now quickly to share some of this information, kind of share what we've been, given, and also some comments that we've seen, especially after just our post of the last video. This is from a GM, and this is in direct contrast to what we just saw, and a lot of people in Discord were saying, it might even feel like it's one specific GM that's doing his own thing in that regards, which would be an interesting twist. But it says, players are free to ERP if they choose to do so. They can also place Party Finder comments to advertise the selling of ERP for Gil, as long as it's not in violation, aka not for real money, right? Oh, you want to trade Gil? Go for it. That's one of the uses of Gil. What do you think about that, Chris?
I think
Hey, how about smack you across the face? How do you feel about that?
First of all, I think somewhere in there, there's a lot of that stuff that very quickly, just in its raw definition, can't be done without ERP. Obviously all of this is in the context of like, this is all, we're still talking about a video game here. This isn't, so like my comparisons to real world, this is not as serious as any of the real world parallels. And one of the things to keep in mind when we see these criticisms is this comes from a point of love. This comes from a point of like, we want this game to succeed and we love this community. And so it's just like, but I want all of it to be good. And so you don't let your friends do a behavior that kind of offended you or offended somebody around them that they didn't notice. You don't just let them just keep doing that behavior. You just say, hey, like, I don't know if you noticed this, but like, you could probably improve at however you handled that situation. That's really what I'm viewing this as. And I think some consistency there is lacking, because I don't know that you can do ERP without brushing up against or breaking TOS. I think
like
that
in
starts
your
to become a
private
lot
house,
like,
right?
like, oh, my state legalized this drug, but it's against federal law. And it's like, just be aware, like, this is like a DPS meter type thing where you're doing something that, while may not be enforced, is not okay. And that's fine. Like, it's not my own personal ethics. I'm just reading the rules. Like, the rules at the side of the pool say don't run. And I understand that the lifeguard is telling you that you can light jog and you're jogging, but like, all I'm doing is reading the rules. I'm not stating whether or not I think we should be running near this pool. I'm just stating, like, ERP gets dangerously close to crossing terms of service when you start to talk about profanity, offensive language. That's in 3.3. It starts to talk about, depending on jurisdiction, can start to talk about no illegal activities in game. There's a lot of things in here that you get really close to things really, really quickly with erotic added to roleplay.
Right. So I think it's about 2 years ago, Square-Enix had a big policy shift, which a lot of people were concerned about. And we covered it here on this channel. And in that shift, it basically said, like, it was kind of more hands off. Like, hey guys, chill out, calm down. The GMs would only really step in if it was like, hey, I asked him to stop, and he is harassing, in that regard.
Sure.
And now it's very, like, it seems that they have either overcorrected or very tight, because even since that change, like, I've seen, and this has been over the course of 2 years, and we do have, like, the data of which that people are just, saying, like, man, like, this has gotten really hard enforced. And like I've said, that it's driven a lot of people out of typically in-game chat and moving it more into, like, I'm just going to be in Discord or something like that, because I'm not going to risk getting reported. I've seen people, like, in Discord, I'm going to highlight a comment here in a second, that was literally, it's like, basically, if all somebody has to do is report you, and you get that warning flag, and just like we covered in that last video, that warning flag is a permanent flag. Like, there is no community service. There is no path of redemption. You get stamped, you're marked, and it sucks. And then, oh my gosh, you accidentally get reported, to the point where I don't have data and I can only theorize at this point, but like, it could easily be something that could be abused and controlled, just like almost in a way like like our own echo chambers, like our own social, like different social media. Like, okay, like this is what the community has determined offensive and non-offensive, and you might not like, because hell, let's just do it. Let me just cover this comment, because it's about excessive emoting, which I guess violates the terms of service, but we'll cover the comment.
I want to see the actual, like I wish we could, like, play the clip. Like,
yeah.
let's roll
that back.
Yeah. So I put a smiley face in chat like a couple of times, they're like, he used it nonstop. It's like, okay, what did actually chat look like? Are we talking about, like, and it's like, all I did was fill the entire chat, every line, for 10 minutes.
Right. And like, okay, that's excessive.
That seems excessive.
Right. So Strudel here says, I was suspended for 3 days last Friday without warning for excessive emoting in Query Mill. Mind you that I was in it was a group interaction with my friends, and I was only given, and my friend was only given a warning. So it was a couple people. His friend got a warning. He did not. I have been playing for 5 years and have only ever received a warning for language, not directed at anyone, but it was a slip up 3 years ago. It felt really unfair, as it was clearly an accident. My friend was treated differently and allowed to explain their situation. After reading a lot about suspensions and warnings after this happened, I realized that most people aren't happy with the system. I would say that's a fact. I haven't seen people like praising the system, and if
Right.
you guys are
Right.
praising, let me know. Like I'm only like being able to inform off what I've seen.
I think people were immensely concerned with I think most people that were okay with it, in my opinion, was because we believed that the enforcement would be less than what the letter of the rule reads. The letter of the rule reads, even going off platform into those Discords and private chats and Reddits and streaming, you can still be banned for that stuff.
And anyway, it goes on to say that they can't remove the warnings, and that just piles up, and the punishment it becomes excremental. You know, so the more warnings, the more punishments, the longer the term, and the issue obviously is that there's no expiration to that warning. That warning mark doesn't fall off in 3 years, and it is to the point where like, oh my gosh, like. I think that's a bad system. I think that's broken. I think that has to, and that should be evaluated and at least reconsidered. Some form of community service,
At least
some
put
form
into a
of
category, right?
Mhm.
So like, you know, a profanity warning a year ago should really, in my opinion, have very little weight on a you know, DPS being linked in chat today. That really, those are two different behaviors. You could have easily learned from one and still made the other mistake. And so the idea that there's going to be this 3-strike rule that's continually counting against you, and so you steal a candy bar in 2001, and then you jaywalk in 2010, and then you know, you forget to pay an electric bill in 2020, and now now that's it, you're done.
You're done.
And it's like, hold on, like it just starts to feel like, okay, maybe a slight modification to the system could be a little bit better. The pessimist in me goes, well, we don't have the system to track that right now. The spaghetti code doesn't really, like, the pessimist in me just immediately dismisses that as impossible. And I think what's hard about it is it's that leash. It's that snap of the neck that we're running along, having a great time in a field of daisies. And then just that, no warning. And that's what hit so hard. It wasn't that this person was like, yeah, and I'd heard all about this. It's no, once I was Googling it, it's like when a product of yours breaks and you Google it, and then you find page after page of people going, this product is awful. And you're like, I had no idea. And like, we as a community fuel that. We go into streams and into Reddit threads and into Discords. And when there is a new player or a sprout in game, we as a community have a fetish with new players. We adore people's first experience. And we sit over their shoulder and we whisper, here comes the good part. This is the really good part. And like, we're just all about this, and it's so good. And then that they finish MSQ and that sprout falls off and they try their first extreme, and we're like, what do you mean reprisals not on the bar? Like, it's just like, we just lose it, and we swing this hard other way, and this person's like, well, hey, you don't pay my sub, and then we report them, and like, it can snap so fast. Like, we don't have a middle ground. We are 99% wonderful, positive, happy, fun-loving people, and then that 1% is just like straight punch to the face.
Man, it really, because like it's been interesting. Like a story I've told recently is, you know, I was sitting with Julie. We were looking at the Endwalker, talking about like the farms, and Julie's considering coming back, and that's awesome. And she's been away from the game, and she's had been a victim of toxic behavior from the 14 community. And when I've told these kind of stories, people are like, oh, you should report them. It's like, yeah, like they were reported, but that was back in the hands-off era. Not in the new, because there was enough to drive around. So there is a serious risk. Like if we were going to sit here and look at the enforcement and trying to protect, people from being like victimized by the community, which does happen. Let's not sit here and, paint a rosy picture of 14, such a great community. They're like, we've talked about it. We've covered it on this channel numerous times. We have a dark side. It's almost kind of like you said, that sprout obsession, that, oh, you love it. And as soon as that sprout sits here and asks for another, like, man, this is so awesome. It'd be awesome, even better, like another boss. You're dead to us. It's like, it's like there is that, like, holy crap, like that puppy turned out to be a chimera, and the dragon head comes out and decides to consume you. And so it's like there's a whole like, we're not a perfect community. Like, we're like, but that doesn't necessarily negate, like, I think in this situation specifically, I think we've got either a problem with a specific GM or a problem with the GM system completely together.
That's always what it is. It's always one bad actor reflecting bad on behalf of all of us. And
Right.
so at what point do we ask ourselves a systematic question? At what point do we stop going, don't worry, we identified the GM in question, and they've been reprimanded, they're not going to do it again. Hopefully, like, they're not in a position they need to lose their job over this, but they've been kind of re-educated on how to better handle this moving forward. The player has had their warning lifted because we disagree with that one. All is good. We just pat ourselves on the back, and it's like, yes, but this is the one that got publicized. Yeah. What about all the ones that didn't get publicized? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, what about all the people who just got their 3-day ban and then left and are now hating this game forever? There's no winning them back.
Right.
And so especially do we just let those it doesn't matter if they're a GM or a player or whatever, or do we just let them just continue to run loose because they've never been caught?
Especially when you talk about your situation, like the situation in the example, like if you offend, like, oh, I had an infraction 3 years ago. There's no appeals process. There's no ability to get that. And that's like, I mean, that's a real world problem brought into a virtual world. And I'd love to see some way of letting those warnings fall off. Especially like if you have a warning and then you go off and get another warning within like a week, it's like within some kind of time period, let there be a natural healing process of like, yeah, like, oh, you used profanity 3 years ago, you got a warning and you haven't done it since. Like, why is that haunting you, right? Like, why is that coming back to bite you, in the butt? And it's,
you don't want somebody who's counting the days, right? Like, March
true.
16th, I'm allowed to just
baby.
Close. It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
I've got the
saving
words.
One up. I've got the macro written.
This is
going to be amazing.
Boom, boom, boom.
And so, like, you like, I understand where that desire to kind of track the history of somebody's past actions matters. That's why, like, in my opinion, the category
just
is
empowering the GMs
so, like,
to have that level, Because essentially maybe the issue here is literally that it's all about the script. Like, this is what happens. This is what we do. There's no thought in looking at the situation. I mean, like, okay, like, oh yeah, I see that you had a previous warning and that was 3 years ago. We're just not going to count that against you. I'm going to make that call, empowering the GMs then to make the decision to avoid that sense of like, all right, it's been 3 years and today's the day, baby. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him so good.
Yeah. So, like, you definitely don't want that. I think the amount that this game has come to mean to, at least Brian and I think a few other people like it. It's heartbreaking to hear
20 million
that,
give or take,
like, somebody's having this miserable experience, especially when people are like, I came into this, I ran 10 dungeons, 8 of them were miserable, and then I quit. And I look back and we have 130 instances in game just across 4 mans and trials. And you go, so 10 of them. So you made it to, what is that? Not even level 50 dungeons? You didn't even get to see the good content and we already scared you off. Like, it just hurts to hear these stories about, like, somebody that I'm so excited to help them find the joy that I found, and they don't make it that far because some jerk has to just ruin their day. Mm-hmm. And in this particular instance, we're talking about that jerk being, possibly the actions of a GM, and that GM may have meant well. That's the other thing is, like, you can accidentally cut somebody off and ruin their day in traffic. Intent is not the only measure.
Yeah.
Sometimes negligence, and, like, Brian and I, we choose to publish our thoughts for all to see. And so we're regular targets of criticism as either our views change on a subject, we become better informed on a subject. As we grow, I'm not the guy I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm some iteration of that. And I hope one that's better. And so, like, I know that we're targets, and, like, that's one of the reasons that, like, in our local case, that's one of the reasons that, like, Brian's wife doesn't play. And when she occasionally stops by stream or she's in game, I don't call her out as anything special because I know that, like, being Brian's wife is part of that anxiety. I know that she feels that she's held to a higher standard, and maybe it's because people are treating her differently, because they're going, wow, he literally writes the controller guides and you can't play well. And all it would take is one person thinking they're going to being funny, saying something like that, and she won't play for 6 months and shouldn't. Like, she shouldn't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of games where she's not going to get treated like that. Yeah. And so, like, maybe our local thing is being biased, but then when we go out to say, you know what, it was a one-time thing, let's just talk about it as a one-time thing. It's a problem, but it's just a one-time thing. and then we get hit with, well, except last Friday, and except 2 weeks ago, and it's like, I don't know, is this a bigger issue? Are we pulling this back? And it's like, holy crap, there's just been this underside that's been doing this all along. And that's really saddening to hear as we prepare to welcome possibly the largest wave of new players of any expansion to date. Like a good expansion followed by Endwalker hype. This is it. This is the time to play 14.
Yeah, it is. It is the time to play 14. And this is unfortunate. So hopefully with enough of us talking about it, enough of the conversation, we can get this raised up in awareness, and hopefully maybe something will get done by it. One of the things that I do, outside of the fact that I've definitely said, out of all of the things that Square-Enix, especially 14's related, their service department is by far one of the most frustrating, aspects of the game. You've dealt with them. I've had to deal with them.
They have a hard job.
They have a hard job. And at the end of the day, like trying to get through that whole process is a pain. So at the core of it, we love the game. We love the community. We really hope that we can help. And then the best thing we can do as a community is just make, this is kind of more like making everybody aware of the problem. And then hopefully we can communicate that either in an interview question or as a part of just the forums, getting the community member team to take that information and get Yoshi P aware. Because one of the things that we saw in this game was the ability to report RMT once Yoshi P saw how bad it was in the United States. Like we did not have that. So they definitely take feedback, and so it's important that we get that to them. That's just where I stand, and hopefully we'll keep you guys apprised of the situation as it develops. Hopefully this is our last post on this topic for a little while, but who knows?
We keep kicking out a really positive one, so whatever day we stop talking about this, there's a really cool interview waiting.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, for Work the Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you have a fantastic day, but until then,
take care.